Okay guys, so I just wanted to revisit the problem of evil. Now I've made a couple of videos on this topic already, but I just wanted to share some more thoughts regarding this and look at it from a slightly different perspective too. So in many cases, most people have a problem or bring up the problem of evil because they have an underlying idea that life is supposed to be good. It's supposed to be amazing. It should be not perfect, but it should be enjoyable, right? And this also ties in with the idea that we have as human beings in many cases, which is that good is whatever results in happiness, whatever results in flourishing, whatever results in ease, and bad is or evil is whatever results in suffering and pain and discomfort, at least from the perspective of our immediate experience. Now, if you have this type of underlying outlook, then obviously when things happen, when trials happen, difficulties come your way and you experience suffering, it's going to disrupt you, right? It's going to throw you off, and you may then come to or end up making the conclusion that, God is evil, or questioning why would God allow this to happen to me, right? Now I can understand that. I can empathize with that if you are looking at it from the perspective of life which is void of God, that there is no creator, there is no cause. All that exists is this physical existence, this material life. We're just here and we're going to die. So this life is all you have. That YOLO perspective. From that angle, I can see where you're coming from. But see, from the Islamic perspective, I think it's very beautiful. Or another way we can sort of really tackle this problem of evil or address it is by highlighting how we understand what good and bad is. Now, one, if you like, perspective on really understanding and comprehending what good and bad is to understand that it's linked with our purpose. Because at the end of the day, if we really understand what our purpose is, our purpose of existence, then everything that, whatever, from that perspective, whatever aids in us fulfilling our purpose is good, because that's what's going to lead us to success, right? And whatever takes us away from our purpose, removes us from our true objective and purpose to life, that is then therefore bad, right? So from the Islamic perspective, let's quickly touch upon what we mean by purpose. And again, I've mentioned this before. We know in the Quran, God makes it very clear that the purpose of human existence, our lives, is to know our Creator and to worship Him. That's what God tells us in the Quran, that He created us to know Him and to worship Him. Now, worship is very comprehensive. I don't have time to go into it right now, but it's not just limited to the ritualistic acts. That's a part of worship, but worship can be everything literally you do in your day-to-day life can be an aspect of worship. Now, understanding this, then therefore whatever aids in us fulfilling our purpose is good. And that could mean that sometimes we may go through something that's difficult, a hardship, a trial, a difficulty. And if that difficulty, if that hardship helps us and aids us in fulfilling our purpose, then that trial or tribulation, that evil that we see in front of us, that affects us and impacts us, is not really evil. It's actually good in disguise. It's actually what's helping us in being successful, not only in this life, but in the eternity, in the hereafter, because it's aiding us in fulfilling our purpose. Now, let me give you an example of this. Let's go to the Quran. In the 18th chapter of the Quran, and I've mentioned this story before, we find the story of two gardeners. Now, one of the gardeners has been blessed with immense wealth. He has two gardens, beautiful gardens, with streams flowing through them and dense forestation and amazing crops. Everything is there, right? He has the most beautiful, luxurious gardens you can ever imagine. Now, what happens is his material wealth and his possessions that he's been blessed with become a means of his delusion. He walks into his garden, as we read in the Quran, and he looks around and he thinks, you know what? And he thinks to himself, I don't think this is ever going to go anywhere. This is here forever. I don't think the day of judgment is ever going to come. This guy is a believer, right? And then he says, even if the day of the judgment comes, if God has given me so much, He's going to give me something far better in the hereafter. So what we see here is an example of how our material possessions and our material wealth and all of the luxuries and amenities that we have in life can result in us becoming blind to our true purpose, becoming blind to the truth, right? So in actual facts, from this perspective now, his material luxuries, if you like, the things that we would generally assume to be good and the things that we'll generally assume to be, pleasant, are actually evil. They are actually something very bad for him because they've turned him away from his true purpose. They've turned him away from the truth. And what does it take for this man to realign himself with the truth? Well, it takes for God to remove all of this from him. He comes back the next day and all of his gardens have been completely destroyed as if they've never existed. And at that moment, he sits down, he rubs his hands, and he thinks to himself, only if I hadn't associated partners with my Lord, this would never have happened. And it's interesting as to his thought here, which is what partners was he associating with God? He wasn't worshipping idols. The partner that he associated with God was his material possessions. His material wealth became a means of his focus and veneration and worship. And that was the problem. That took him away from his true purpose, which is to know God and to worship God alone. So what it took was this act of, if you like, evil, or this tribulation, this trial, where all of his wealth is removed from him at one instant, immediately. And he's left with nothing from a worldly perspective, right? And that evil is actually what's really good for him, because it's actually what's realigned him with the truth, with his true purpose. And in the grand scheme of things, that is going to result in absolute success, true success. And if that's the case, then whatever's happened to him, this bad that's happened to him, this trial that's come down on him, is actually good, right? So it's something we need to really appreciate. And it's a beautiful story in many ways, and we draw many lessons from this. But through this story, we really appreciate, how Muslims at least, and how people hopefully generally should really understand good and bad, right? That I would say, and I would summarize it like this: that from the Islamic perspective, good and bad is relative to whatever is beneficial and whatever aids in you fulfilling the purpose of your existence, which is to worship God and to know Him. And we have a limited time to be successful in doing that. That's this lifetime, right? This is the testing ground. This is the examination room. Can we find our Creator and can we submit to Him and worship Him alone, and therefore fulfill the purpose of existence? So whatever aids us in doing that is actually good, right? Hence, sometimes God will put us through things in our lives which are difficult, which are trials, which are tribulations. We may not be able to understand the wisdom behind them. But we have to always remember, and as I've said before, we have to always remember that there is inevitably good in whatever you go through, no matter how difficult it is. You may not see the wisdom behind it. We don't, as human beings, we're limited in our knowledge. We don't see the wisdom behind everything. We don't see the wisdom behind many things, right? It doesn't mean there's no wisdom there. But from one perspective, as we've been talking about today, if we could just understand that maybe one of the wisdoms behind what's happening right now to me, this hardship or trial that I'm going through, is to help me maybe realign myself with my true purpose and realign myself with my Creator and come back to Him. And if this trial and tribulation helps me achieve that, then this is good, right? But we have to really think things through and really understand reality to be able to understand this perspective. So I just wanted to share those thoughts with you in regards to good and bad and how we understand it from the Islamic perspective, and how understanding it actually, from another perspective deals with this supposed problem of evil that's presented. So let me know your thoughts below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you, especially the Muslims as well as the non-Muslims. And make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to share. Until next time, take care.